Today on Reviews from the Blind, I talk about the A7 III, a do-it-all camera from Sony. So I want to talk about the A7 III, guys. I'm sitting here in my backyard bird studio. The birds are chirping away out here, and I just wanted to talk about my experiences with it. This is going to be a full review. I've had this camera since June of 2019. So I've had this camera a long time. It's been a really great camera. It is a do-it-all camera. Just like I said in the beginning, it is a can-do camera. If you're landscape, if you're wildlife, if you're portrait guy, if you're just want something to take along with you on camping trips or hiking or something like that, this is a do-it-all camera at a reasonable price. And I think you're going to be impressed with this review, but I do want to talk about some of the cons as we go. So I use this camera primarily with, and here it is right here, by the way, guys. I shoot this primarily with my Sigma 150 to 600. So this review will be based mostly on that. I do shoot with the Sony A200 to 600 also. Want to tease that review for you guys. That's going to be a good review coming up. The Sony 200 to 600. This camera is amazing with that combination. Okay, so let's talk about my experiences with this over the last year and a half. I was a Canon shooter for a number of years. I shot Canon most of my life, starting with the Canon T70. I then graduated to, I can't even remember now. There were several Canon models out back in the 90s. Film cameras. And finally I got into digital with the 1D Mark II. And I was with Canon for so many years. I love Canon. I have a special place in my heart for Canon. I still have a Canon 7D Mark II backup camera. But what I realized was that as Sony started making cameras like this, and Sony started stepping up to the plate and really, really rocking it with these cameras, what I realized was I've been missing out, okay? Now Canon's starting to catch up now with the R5 and R6, but for the price, guys, this is the bomb. I mean, you're talking about a camera that used I can pick up for $1,700, $1,600, and it's all that. Okay, so specifically I want to talk about how I use and have used this camera over the last year and a half. So I'm out here in my backyard bird studio right now. This is my blind. That's why I say reviews from the blind, because I'm in my my blind or hide, and I'm looking out here now, and I can see finches and cardinals and so on. So first of all, how does this do with backyard birds? Okay, I love it for backyard birds, and here's why. First and foremost, some backyard birds are skittish. Okay, cardinals tend to be, woodpeckers, certain woodpeckers tend to be skittish. This has a silent shutter on it, and I can sit back here and I can photograph at 10 frames per second with that silent shutter, and they have no idea that I'm sitting here. They don't care. They just don't care. They don't hear it. That has been a game changer for me, an absolute game changer. Is it worth switching? For me, it was. That alone was worth switching. There comes a mourning dove in there. So that's something to consider if you're a big bird photographer like I am, or deer. I just got done photographing couple months back, photographing white-tailed deer. They could not hear this camera. They never heard the shutter. Now, the caveat to that is the shutter does not have the backlit illuminated dual sensor that the A9 has, and therefore, if you're photographing birds in flight with silent shutter, you will get distortion in the image. So flight shots, action shots are a no-no with that. So that's a caveat to this. We'll talk about that later. So I primarily use this. If you'll notice on the end, I've got this big old honking thing here that doesn't belong there. That's the MC11 converter for the Sigma lenses. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my Sigma lens on here just so you can see that, because that is primarily what I shoot with, especially about here in the backyard. So there it is attached to that lens. It made good sense for me, right? Because I'm coming from Canon over to Sony, and so that made great sense. Why would I want to get rid of all my gear, and why would I want to spend that kind of money? So I use the Sigma 150-600 Contemporary, and I'm happy. I'm happy with that combo. How about sharpness and detail? Amazing. Amazing sharpness, amazing detail. High ISO performance is just stunning. I thoroughly enjoy using this. Now, how is it with birds in flight? Can it do birds in flight? That's always a question I get. That's always the question I see on the internet. You know, can it do birds in flight? The answer is yes, with some caveats. Okay. With the MC11 converter, it has a much lower hit rate than it does with the Sony 200-600. The Sony 200-600, I was nailing, 4 out of 5 shots. With this, I'm getting 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, somewhere around there. So, and it depends. It depends on the bird. It depends on the contrast. It depends on how fast the bird is flying. If it's a wading bird versus something faster like an eagle or something like that. I mean, that makes a difference, right? So in the introduction here, who is this camera for, right? Who does this fit? It fits everyone. This camera fits everyone. If you're a nature guy, it's great for scenics. It's only got a 24 megapixel sensor. We'll talk about that more in the specifications. It's only got a 24 megapixel sensor. So that could be a game changer for you if you're wanting to make massive prints, and I mean massive prints, right? But 24 megapixels, I mean, that's what is it? 6,000, let's see, 6,000 by 4,000. 6 times 4 is 24. Yeah, 6,000 by 4,000 pixels. So that's no slouch, guys. But if you find you're going to need a lot of heavy cropping, then you're probably going to want some kind of upsizing tool like the gigapixel, or you're going to want to step up to like the A7 IV R4. Okay, but considerable cost increase going to the A7 R4. So what I wanted to do now, the way this is going to work, I just did an intro for you, kind of gave you my general thoughts. We're going to go into specifications. We're going to go one by one through them. We're going to talk about them. Then we're going to go to the images that I've taken with this camera, both with the Sigma lens and with the 200-600. And also, we'll probably look at a couple, let's see. Yeah, I've got a couple macro shots we can take a look at. And I'm going to finish up with my final thoughts with the pros and the cons of this lens. So let's get into the specifications. This was introduced in 2018. I bought mine in 2019, okay? The megapixels, 24.2 megapixels. As we discussed earlier in the introduction, not a huge amount of megapixels for a modern camera, but still very good. If you look at the Canon 1DX Mark III, for example, it only has a 21 megapixel sensor, or 20 or 21, something like that. And so we're way in the ballpark, if not higher. I would have loved to have seen something around 30 megapixels with this camera. I think that would have been more in the level of expectations from most people. However, as your megapixels increase, your processing speed needs to increase. All that, you know, you're talking about an increase in cost. And this camera coming in at, you know, roughly $2,000, a little under $2,000, that's asking a lot of a camera, you know, frankly, in that range. So, stabilization, 5-axis image stabilization. Okay, 5-axis image stabilization. Has it been effective? Yes and no. I had a little glitch. I'll be honest with you. I had a little glitch with the image stabilization. Okay, and it happened with a Sony lens. I had a Sony lens attached. You're supposed to, as far as I know, you're supposed to be able to use those in conjunction. Let me know if that's not true. That might have been my problem. But I was getting this weird doubling effect. And what was happening is, and maybe this is something you need to be aware of, you know, when you're photographing with it, when you got your lens stabilization on and your camera stabilization on, and the wind is blowing heavily in the background, it was creating, let's say that it had a branch. Let's say there was a branch, right? One branch. Well, it was giving me 2 branches, like I was drunk looking at it. So it'd be like this, kind of, 2 branches. And I was seeing that not on the bird that I was photographing, but on the branches in the background. There was the exact same leaf. Like there'd be one leaf and then there'd be another leaf, like right there, the same leaf, mirrored basically because of the wind. And I mean, I was shooting it like, you know, 1/800th of a second too, or 1/500th or 1/800th. So it shouldn't have been that bad, honestly. But there was some kind of weird anomaly going on there. It wasn't blurring so much the leaves like you would expect. It was just doubling them. And I think it was due to an inconsistency in the stabilization system. But it wasn't a total deal breaker. It just was odd. Okay, so I did run into that. Let's talk about the image processor, Bion ZX. You know, they always got crazy names for these things. A fast processor, no doubt. Is it as fast as some processors out there? No, not as fast as the A9. But a lot of people call this camera the A9 Junior. And the reason they call it that is it's fast. It has a fast AF. We're going to talk about that in a second. Auto ISO. Yes, it has auto ISO. ISO 100 to 51,200. Expandable from 50 to 204,800. How do I feel about the ISO on this camera? ISO, amazing. Just frankly, amazing. I'm shooting at 800 out of the gate. As soon as I get this camera out in the morning, I'm shooting at 800. Okay. It's that good. It is that good, guys. It's basically like 200 was, you know, 7 years ago. Okay. 800 is the new 200. I love to shoot it in that 800 range to start with. I have shot up to 6,400 on occasion without too much trouble. Need obviously to control the noise in post, using some kind of tools like denoise AI or something like that, but still usable, very usable at up to 3,200. Very usable, extremely usable. Now, what happens is though, and that's something you got to know about when you're shooting at those higher ISOs. You lose the ability to, you lose the dynamic range. So you lose the ability to bring back those highlights in post. So if I'm shooting at, you know, ISO 1600 or 3200, I'm not going to be able to pull those highlights back like I can if I'm shooting at 200 or 400. So that's something to think about. I have noticed that myself. So let's get into the AF. Let's get into autofocus. What I like, what I don't like about the autofocus. Okay, the autofocus on this camera is frankly amazing, but it's not stunning. Okay. It really has a similar autofocus speed probably to, I don't know, maybe a Canon 5D4 or something like that. It's very responsive. You can't really compare it to a DSLR. If you happen to be coming from the DSLR world, you can't really compare it to the DSLR. It's not really comparable. It's fast. If the lighting is good, it's very fast. Now, it has a hybrid AF, and what that means is you have a contrast detect, which is kind of the old school, and you have a phase detect, which is what typically people would see in their old DSLRs and things like that. Now, why is it a hybrid? It's a hybrid because it's phase detect as long as it can possibly be phase detect. As the lighting gets lower and lower and lower and you're running out of light, maybe your aperture is going farther down. Maybe you're at f8 now and, f9, and you're getting, pretty small apertures. If it's struggling, it'll switch to the old contrast detect, which will then be very, very slow. Now, do I have that problem with this setup right here? Yes. On occasion, I will have that problem with this. However, the MC11 has had several updates, and it really doesn't struggle like it used to with autofocus. It really does an amazing job with this Sigma lens. Having said that, the 200 to 600 is a much better combination on the AF. Now, AF, let's talk about what kind of options we have. So we have 693 phase detect autofocus points. Folks, that is huge. Do you realize how much that is? That covers pretty much the whole screen. So when I'm finding AF points manually, I can pretty much use the whole screen, right? When my camera needs to find automatically the AF points, like if it's tracking a bird and it's following it all over the screen, it has a huge space to work with. Whereas the old days with DSLRs, you had this little space in the middle, you might have this little space like right there in the middle. That was your AF, right? Well, that's not true anymore with these cameras. Another reason I switched to the mirrorless system, why wouldn't I, right? I mean, just for some of these amazing features. Now, birds in flight. Let's talk about AF and birds in flight. AFC, you're going to want to be on continuous mode, of course. I had the best luck using zone, believe it or not, using zone and wide. I had to look in my notes. Wide is what I primarily use. And what that is, that's the whole screen. That lets the A7 III pick what it wants. And it works 9 times out of 10 better that way. Now, there are other modes like flexible spot. Does that work? Yes, they all work good. Okay, they all work good. Flexible spot is nice. Lock on, flexible spot, lock on, zone, center, all these things, they work good. Wide works really good though, in my opinion, especially with the Sigma. Well, and with the 200 to 600, I thought it worked excellent. Now, if you had a lot of trees, well, even with the trees, it still had a pretty good hit rate. Because I was shooting down in Florida, and you're going to see those shots where there were trees in the background, and I was on wide, and it was nailing it. So these cameras have become so sophisticated, guys, that they can do just some amazing things with detecting backgrounds and foregrounds and subjects and all that. Just amazing. This camera does have animal eye AF. It does not work. I talked to Sigma about it, and they do not recommend trying to use it. It really doesn't work with the 150 to 600. Sometimes you can't even turn it on, which they did not design the MC11 to work with that feature. So that's another reason you may want to buy a Sony lens. But the animal eye AF, I have not really tested. I don't need it really. When I'm photographing deer or elk. I just really don't need it. I mean, that's the bottom line with that, right? So, great autofocus. Is it awesome with the Sigma? No, not awesome with the Sigma. Is it awesome with the Sony? I think so. Is it as good as the 1DX Mark II Canon? No. Is it as good as the A9? Probably not. I haven't shot the A9 yet. I have shot the 1DX2. Is it as good as a 6D Mark II? Oh, 100 times better. Is it as good as a 7D Mark II? Better than the 7D Mark II? Yes. So I hope that gives you some kind of indication of how good or how bad it is. Let's talk about the flash sync. Flash sync is 1/250th of a second, so it's a modest flash sync. Wished it was more around 1/320. It doesn't really matter anymore so much because we have flashes that can shoot at high speed, so we can shoot it, you know, a thousandth of a second if we want to with our flash. How about 4K video? Okay, now here's something I have used quite a bit, is the 4K video. I love the 4K video. It is full frame, no pixel binning 4K video. You do not have, basically what it does, it shoots at 6K, I believe, and then it will downsample that to a full frame 4K. That's pretty impressive, guys, at 24p. I do use it. I have used a slow motion. You may be seeing that now as a, I may put that in here in a minute. But, you know, stunning, guys, just stunning 4K video on this camera. When I compare it, you know, with my 1080p on my 7D Mark II, which is not that old, it's just not even, it's not even close. It's not even close. The 4K on this is just stunning. Mostly I shoot it in 4K 30p, which is a slate crop. 24p, I will more in the future. I've shot 120 frames per second. Slow-mo at 1080p, it can handle that. So I use it on my live streams. If you see in my live streams, most of those are done with the 4K on the A7 III. The reason I'm shooting this on a different camera is because we got the A3 here. We can't shoot it, right? So, battery, FP NZ100, excellent battery. I do use the Velo grip, the BG grip with this, and I use 2 batteries. 2 batteries will get me through easily an entire day of shooting fast action. I can shoot birds in flight all day long with 2 batteries. So batteries, no longer an issue with any of these cameras. Used to be with Sony, you had all kind of problems with batteries. That's not a problem anymore. Okay. Let's talk about water resistance. Okay. Unfortunately, most of the Sony cameras, I don't know if the A1 is, I can't remember yet. That's one I'd love to get my hands on to review. But I know the A7 III, the A7 R4, the A7 III, they don't have sealed cameras. They're water and dust resistant. So if it falls into a creek for just a couple seconds, it's probably done, guys. It's probably going to get water in there. That's not cool, in my opinion. But I was willing to overlook that and buy this simply because of all the features. And you may well do that as well. So, as I said, the price is $2,000 on this camera. The used price is about $1,600 to $1,700. The price, this camera is so popular, guys, that the price is basically holding on it. It's so popular that the price is holding. That says something about this camera, you know. I mean, if you remember the Canon 7D series, the price would never hold on them because they weren't that great. They were okay, but they just weren't that great. And so the price would just plummet on them after a couple years. These are holding. These Sonys are holding their value. I could sell this right now for probably about $1,500 easily. And you know, I may do that. I may step up to, you know, an A9 or something here. I'm not sure yet, but, you know, I may do that. So, where does that leave us? I think right now, what I want to do in this review is go and let's take a look at the images and let's talk about the images. Okay, folks, let's get into the actual image viewing for the A7 III. Now, what you're seeing up here first is a photograph that I made with the A7 III. This actually is a Grackle, and no, this was not done in the studio. No, I did not Photoshop, quote, Photoshop this. No, this is dodging and burning. This is lightening and darkening. Nothing else. Actually, the background was pretty much black as it was out of the camera. Very little work done on this image. So let's get that out of the way. This actually won first place in the North Carolina Wildlife contest this year for the magazine, and very happy with that. So if we zoom in here, we can see great sharpness around the eye here. Amazing sharpness on the bill. The camera is just amazing coloration. In here we can see the purples and just beautiful colors in this guy. Absolutely stunning. It did surprise me that this one won, not because it's not a good photograph, but because the subject is not an endearing subject in wildlife. So yeah, that did surprise me a bit. So as you can see, just really good, high quality, 24 megapixel image. The next image, okay, this one I made on a fall day. Again, A7 III, all these are A7 III. Within the last 2 years. The background here is a real background that was actually there. It was the background that goes with this image. This was a fall day, of course. Lots of oranges and yellows back in there, a little bit of green. But again, the thing did really well, really well. We can zoom into the eye here. You can see the eye is tack sharp. Really high quality image of this red-bellied woodpecker. I don't know what else you would expect out of a camera, but it does what it's supposed to do, guys. It does what it's supposed to do. Next image, let's go to macro. Okay, this is the Canon 100mm macro attached with the MC11 converter, manual focus, and some focus stacking. If you don't know what focus stacking is, I have some videos out there on that as well. So this is a blue morph butterfly, and very shallow depth of field, of course. If I zoom in here to this guy, let's let it load up here. Okay, let it load. Okay, you can see how sharp, just tack sharp this is. Beautiful quality image here of this blue morph butterfly. And I'm not sure, what was this at F? What is this at? Anyway, it's not that important. It's not that important. F5.6, so I focus stacked it, yeah. All natural light, and I really like that one. Again, what are we expecting here, guys? Hope you're not expecting a bad review, because I could not give this camera a bad review. Is there some noise in the background here? Yeah, I could have cleaned the noise up a little bit, but I'm happy with it. Let me
Let me just keep that metadata up there so I can keep referring to it. Okay, so I did crop it a little bit here. That's normal, I think, especially when you're talking about focus stacking. Let's see, 1/640th of a second on that one. And ISO 4000, so that's a pretty high ISO shot there. And it looks pretty doggone good. Next image, backyard birds. How does it handle backyard birds? Well, here is a backyard type of bird. He is in a plum tree in early spring. We're starting to see the buds. This is an eastern bluebird. And again, if I come in here, tack sharp. Of course, this is the Sony, or this is the Sigma 150-600C contemporary. So anybody tells you that lens isn't sharp is full of baloney. All right, I can tell you that. I've been shooting with that thing for many years. Many years. Okay, next image. We have a red wolf here who is very unhappy that the beta male is trying to steal his food. And so he's a little grumpy. A little higher ISO shot here. 2000, ISO 2000. Focal length 600 millimeters. What? It's not sharp at 600 millimeters? I beg to differ. I beg to differ. Okay. Good shot of the wolf here. Really liked it. And that is 1/800th of a second at f6.3, 600 millimeters. Sigma 150-600. Again, Sigma 150-600. We are at ISO 6400. Of course, this has been cleaned up some, but let's zoom in on it. Check sharpness. Sharpness is good. A little bit of grain there, a little bit of noise in the image, but overall, nobody seems to care. Everybody likes the image. I've had a lot of good comments on this particular image. Got the fog going on here. I did clean up a little bit around here and so forth, but no heavy Photoshop work. So this is a elk that is actually taken here in North Carolina. We have an elk population in North Carolina. So these are wild elk. Unfortunately, they get tagged, and many of them have radio collars. And it's just, that's part of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and that's just what they do. Okay, next image. Oh man, one of my favorites from my trip to Florida this year. I am a sucker for blue skies. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I'll tell you what, you put a pink bird on a blue sky and you have got the right combination. And I really like what we're seeing here. Let's zoom it in. Tack sharp. I got a dust spot over here I gotta get rid of. But tack sharp. Man, I'll tell you what, that's the Sony 200-600 right there. That's the Sony 200-600. I rented it to try it out down in Florida, and holy smoke. I don't know if you're hearing bad things about it. I've heard pretty much all good things. But my experience with this lens was that it was, if you're familiar with the Canon 600 f4, it was maybe just slightly, and I mean slightly, less sharp than that lens. I mean, it's not even funny. Now, it is an f6.3 lens, but wow, guys. Flight shot after flight shot I got with this lens. Amazing. Amazing quality. Next shot. This is of a bluebird, a female bluebird, flying in with food for the young bluebird. This is cropped pretty heavily here, by the way, but even cropped, you can see it came out quite well. It held up quite decently to the crop. And by the way, this was an ISO 4000 image. And I believe I used my 300 f4. Yes, my Canon 300 f4L to make this image. 1/4000th of a second at f4. Next image, okay, back to the 200 to 600, Sony 200 to 600, with a shot of a cattle egret doing a wing flap. Beautiful blue sky behind. Good lighting. And let's check the sharpness. Loading up here. Very sharp. Very sharp. You have a hard time, very shallow depth of field too, as you can see. You have a hard time saying anything bad about this this lens and this camera. Just a stunning setup. Okay, next shot, early spring, the tufted titmouse in the plum tree, calling. Can we say birds in bloom? Cover shot. Beautiful image. I love it. Came out perfectly. The Sony again winning the day at ISO 800 here. As I said, I simply don't shoot much below ISO 800. There's just no need, right? There's just no need to. You know, unless I'm in a situation where I'm shooting a commercial shot or I need a landscape that I know is going to print to, you know, ridiculous sizes, there's just no reason to worry about it. This camera can handle it at 24 megapixels. Okay, next image. Okay, this is the 200 to 600 again, I think. Is this the 200 to 600 or am I back to my Sigma? I don't see. This could either be, okay, this is the Sigma. This is my Sigma 150 to 600 at 435 millimeters. This guy's flying treetop level. Let's check sharpness. It's pretty distant, but not bad. Not bad sharpness on this guy. And that Sigma again proving itself to be a good camera to make this photograph. And that's 1/2500th of a second at f6.3, 435 millimeters, ISO 1000. Okay, back to the eastern bluebird, female eastern bluebird in flight, carrying a type of cricket, I believe, or some kind of strange. It looks like a cricket, but it's got a weird head on it. So it's some kind of weird bug we have here. Good sharpness. I mean, guys, a totally different lens. 300 f4 lens L from Canon, shooting on it with the MC11 converter at 1/4000th of a second. If you want to know the minimum for fast-moving songbirds, you need to be at 1/4000th of a second or higher, in my opinion. But look at the color. Beautiful colors. Here we got a flamingo, a Chilean flamingo at the local zoo here. Zoom into the eye. And if we can ever load up here. And the eye is sharp. Everything looks great. Colors are great. Got a little backlight. Yeah, kind of a weird lighting situation here, but I like it. Focal length 600 millimeters on my Sigma, 150 to 600. That's full frame, 4000 by 6000 dimension, 1/640th of a second, f6.3. And let's skip that one. Another shot of the red-bellied woodpecker, a dorsal shot here. Sharp image, sharp eye. Get to see the back of that beautiful bird for a change. Same old thing. Now this one was at 1/250th of a second. So we're getting low. Sigma 150 to 600. But 1/250th, yeah, 313 millimeters. So I was quite close in my blind with this guy. All right, so I kind of broke from the nature just to kind of, I want to give you, this is a commercial shot that I did. I wanted to show you just a little bit more of what it can do when you got a really nice lens attached to it. These are bullets from the 7.62 by 54R, used primarily for hunting and sport in America these days. But you can see just how detailed it looks here as I zoom in. Every little, I mean, almost too much detail. You can actually see a little bit of dirt, a little bit of dust on my little set here. So almost too much detail. And that was 100 millimeter macro, Canon 100 millimeter macro, 1/25th of a second at f4. So I did some focus stacking here as well. Okay, another tight shot of some 7.62 by 39 millimeter bullets, also part of the same commercial shoot that I did. You can see here the detail again of, see the metal, the brass coating on these bullets. You can just see every little nuance. I wish you could see it on my monitor. I did do this whole thing in 4K, so I'm hoping it's going to look pretty good, but wow, guys, I mean, stunning stuff. But that's pretty much it. You know, what's my favorite with this camera? I don't know. I don't have a favorite yet, I don't think, with it. I mean, all these were good. I like this one's I really like this one a lot for color. But I hope you can kind of see where this camera fits. It really is a jack of all trades. It is a camera that I can take anywhere. I can do anything with it. I can shoot weddings. I could shoot wildlife, still life. I can do again the macro insects, the macro flowers, fungi. I mean, just, you know, waterfalls. And, you know, we could be printing these things at easily up in the, 30-inch, 40-inch range. No problem. Absolutely no problem. And still have plenty of detail. So I hope that this part was useful. Next, we're going to take a look at my conclusion and my concluding remarks. Okay, so we're back. Let's talk about my final thoughts on this camera. All right, so let's talk about price. We talked about the price at $2,000. Let's just say $2,000. It's $1,900. Let's just $1,900, $2,000. A7 III, $3,000. Way out of most people's budget, right? So that's a check in the A7 III's pros. How about the A9? We can buy the A9, right? Who needs this? We can buy the A9. Try $3,700 right now. Almost take two times more than the A7 III. How about the Canon R5? Almost $4,000, guys. Just crazy expensive. How about, okay, fine, we'll step to the Canon R6. What's that coming in at? $2,500. It's still way above the A7 III. How about maybe buy a used Canon 1DX Mark II? Great camera, right? I did a review on that. Check it out. Great camera. It's come way down in price. How much does it cost now? $2,700. $2,700, guys. So you can see why I gravitated toward the A7 III. It has all of the features, right? How about more pros?
Does birds in flight. Bang, checked off that box. Not as well as some pro cameras, but good enough for me. Silent shooting. Did I mention silent shooting? All day long, silent shooting. Love it. 10 frames a second. Long battery life compared to previous models. Checked off that box for me. Pop-out viewfinder. Not the best in the world. Lower resolution than most. But check it off. I can pop it out. Great for landscapes. Great for low-level macro shots of flowers or fungi or things like that, right? Check it off. Amazing image quality, 24 megapixels. Check it off. Amazing 4K image quality. Check it off. 2 card slots. Did I mention that? I forgot to mention that. 2 card slots. Check it off. Great low light performance. Boom. Cons. Okay, so yeah, you can't have a camera at this price range without cons, right? It just that's the way life is, right? What's the cons? Does not have the new backlit illuminated sensor, dual sensor that the A9, A9 II have. Okay, they have the ability to photograph in silent without any distortion at 20 frames a second. Okay, that's part of the reason they cost 2 times more, right? But is that a deal breaker for me? In most cases, no. Because most of the time when I'm taking action shots, the bird knows I'm there. The deer knows I'm there. The elk knows I'm there, right? So it's not an issue. It's when I'm hidden in my blind, like not just this blind, but you know, my other blinds I use in the woods and so forth. That's when it makes a difference, right? Okay. I wish the viewfinder was fully articulating. How many, guys, how many times have you heard a review where the guy was like, hey, we love this camera, but why is the viewfinder not fully articulating? This is like 2020, 21 now, right? Why are we not having everything fully articulating? I just don't understand that. Okay. Not fully weather sealed. Already talked about that. That's a common Sony issue. Here is something I ran into. We didn't talk about this earlier. And I know I'm probably going to catch some flack about this, but I'm just telling you the truth. When I'm videoing at 4K and say on the hummingbird shoot where you saw earlier, if I let my camera stay out here for about 30 minutes in that heat, boom, it shuts down. And why is that a big deal? Well, if you're remote shooting, which I do occasionally, you're going to want your camera out in the heat for a little while because you're going to be remote shooting these hummingbirds in slow-mo. And so I'm going to hit hit the app. I have the app, Sony app. I'm going to hit that and it's going to go into slow-mo, right? So, yeah, that was an issue. I'm sorry about all the other reviewers that say it's not. It was an issue with this camera. It did shut down at 4K. Now, maybe if I would have gone back to 1080p. Well, I was at 1080p. No, that's the thing. I was at 1080p because I was shooting slow-mo. So, yeah, it was overheating at 1080p. I think the whole camera itself was overheating. And I even had a tarp over it. Not a tarp, but like a light canvasy thing to keep the direct heat off from it. Maybe that hurt it more. I don't know. That could have caused less airflow, but I don't think so. I think it was overheating because I tried it both. I remember I tried it both ways. So the other thing that's a big con with this, and I've heard this from other guys too, so it's not just me. When you move the autofocus point around, it's gray. The autofocus point is gray. They've changed that in the new cameras. But yeah, the autofocus point is gray. The problem with that is, as nature photographers, what is our background like a lot of times? A lot of times it's dark, right? It's a dark green or just plain dark. And often has that neutral looking color to it, sometimes, and that you can lose that in your viewfinder. As that's going around your viewfinder, you're losing it. And I've had that happen several times. It's been very frustrating. The other thing is, we didn't talk about this either, but on the back of the camera, you know, you can do touch when you're in, you know, if you got, say you got a tripod mounted and you're, you know, you can touch, move your focus points around. Well, since I'm left eye dominant, when I come up on there, look what's hitting. My nose is hitting the viewfinder, and what happens is it will move your focus point to where your nose is. So you can turn that off, which I do, and I recommend for left eye dominant people. But that's one problem, one serious problem, I think, with it. But that's going to be a problem with any of your cameras. So is it a horrible con? Not really. So I talked about the pros, and I talked about the cons. What's my final thoughts? Bottom line, it checks off all the boxes for me. Great birds in flight, great backyard birds, great deer, mammal photography lens. It just checks off everything for me. The price is right. It does what pretty much Sony says it. Okay, guys, so my phone decided to overheat there. let's reshoot that. I'll leave the air conditioning on, so you might see a little vibration here going on. But okay, so we're talking about pros and cons, and then I started talking about my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on this camera. Amazing camera. Price is right on it, guys. Checks off all the boxes. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. Is it as good as the A9? Most likely no, right? We've all seen the reviews. No, it's not going to be. Is it as good as the 1DX Mark II? Nah, debatably. Not really. But it has a lot more features that trump it. Is the AF as good? No, but it has a lot more features that trump it. So, is it a high quality camera that will handle any of your needs? Yes. Checks off the box. Landscapes. I've shot landscapes, waterfalls, macro, deer, elk, wading birds, backyard birds. Have not shot any raptors with it yet, in flight or anything like that, but that will be coming soon probably. So is it worth getting, guys? Yes. Go out and buy one. This is an amazing camera for the price. There's a reason. Sorry, I was looking at the Cardinals out there. There's a reason that this thing is still selling, and still selling at the price it's selling at. It is a stunning loss leader for Sony. They're probably taking a bath on this camera a little bit. They're trying to get you into the brand with a really nice full frame camera. And go out, don't take my word for it, go look at other reviews. You know, I'm telling you the God's honest truth here about this camera. And I have been using it now for 1.5 years, and I would not get rid of it. It just does what it's supposed to do. So, bottom line is, awesome camera, 2 thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Make it a great day, and whatever you do, get out there and enjoy nature.